So there's a new Gallup poll out on the issue of marijuana, and there are some takeaways from the findings that I think are important to bring up. So when people were asked if they'd ever tried weed, 44% said yes. 44%. Now, this is like a huge shift for the American people, because when you go back to 1969, which is a time when people are like, oh, hippies, bro, peace and love, let's all take LSD. Like, that's, what you think of, or at least what I think of when I think of 1969. Only 4% of people back then said they tried weed. Now, you might not believe that number. I don't believe that number. That's probably underrepresented because there was a bigger societal taboo on doing drugs. So, that number was probably higher than 4%. But, I mean, look, I'd venture to guess it's definitely not above 10%. Okay, then that we're really inflating that number to get to 10%. So either way, even if you say that's underrepresented, and I do, either way, we've still moved tremendously in the direction of people being more pro-weed and people trying weed. 44% today, they say 4% in 1969 and 33% in 1985. So now it's almost half the country, man. Almost half the country admits to smoking it. Now, again, there might be people who have smoked it but are not admitting it for a variety of reasons. So maybe the number actually is 50% of people today have tried weed, maybe even 60. Who knows? Who knows? But if you accept these numbers as ballpark numbers, which I generally do, well, then it's clear that we're moving in the direction of more freedom and people, experimenting with drugs in their own consciousness more. So here's what occurred to me as I was going through the data here. If the laws were really being enforced and all these people somehow were caught, like that time when they smoked weed, even if it was just once, cop showed up. If that was the case, nearly half the country would have a criminal record. How incredible is that? Think about that. If the laws were actually enforced as they're written on the books, as they are, if the laws were really enforced and these people were caught, virtually half the country would have a criminal record because they've smoked weed. If President Obama or President Clinton or President Bush were caught doing drugs, as we know they did, well, then they'd have criminal records as well, and none of them would have been president. Okay, guys, can we please stop the bullshit and just legalize it already? I mean, think about it this way. Imagine 44% of the country admitted to doing a real crime, like murder, let's say. First of all, that wouldn't happen because that would be insane. But second of all, the other 56% of Americans, what would their response be? I know what my response would be. I would say, I want those people arrested right now, still. 44%, they all committed murder, 44% of them. There's some dangerous people out there, arrest them all. That's what my response would be. I'm assuming your response would be the same. What do you want, to let people who are murderers just walk and say, oh, yeah, that's cool. There's Steve. I saw him murder Craig last night. Is that how you'd respond? I don't think you'd respond that way. I certainly wouldn't respond that way. I'd want them all in jail still. But that's a response to a real crime. This person did X. This person did a genocide 32 years ago. Oh, fuck it, lock them up. Fuck them. Of course lock them up. That's a real crime. But when you hear that 44% of the country smoked weed, what's your response? Is your response, oh, lock them up, put them in a cage. They have to be kept away from society. No, your response is, yeah. Okay, me too. So what? You want to know why your response is like that? Because it's not really a crime. If anything, the crime is to call it a crime. In my opinion, it's a crime to say, I'm going to put you in a cage and take away your freedom because you tweaked your consciousness slightly. Use that same logic, we should be locking people up when they get Xanax from their doctor because they have anxiety attacks. Use that same logic, we should be locking people up for trying a Monster Energy or drinking some caffeine or having a Corona at night after work. They're drugs. Whether or not you say, hey, that's a harder drug, that's a softer drug, whatever, they're drugs, okay? People are tweaking their consciousness all the time. But it's only with certain ones. We'll say this one will lock them up for a long time for doing that one. This one will lock you up, but just for a smaller amount of time. What the fuck are we doing here, man? What are we doing? And if you listen to Dr. Carl Hart, who's an expert on this, he says 80 to 90% of all drug users are moderate.